Welcome back, everyone, to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today for Monday, August 7th, 2013, and I'm Darko. Alright, I'm ready to continue here. I was actually supposed to get these last articles here that I'll be covering in the first video, but I kind of went into depth and rambled on about Syria, but yeah, not really sure if this is all part of the plan as far as what's going on. It seems like it's nobody ever actually beats the system, and and after Assad was declaring victory and all that stuff, and all of a sudden you had basically just, it seemed like everything was just going south for them after he made those declarations. So for whatever it's worth, it's really bad out there, and I think it will lead to some kind of escalation of something. But German arms sales to Persian Gulf states to hit record high this year. The Gulf states, mostly Qatar, was funding the insurgents inside Syria that they call the rebels and call it a civil war instead of a foreign invasion. It says here a newly published report has revealed that the German arms sales to 6-member Persian Gulf Cooperation Council states are set to reach a new record this year after booming sales in the first half, with most weapons destined for Qatar, including 62 German Leopard 2 combat tanks and 24 howitzer artillery cannons. German Chancellor Merkel's government is facing fierce criticism for its arms sales to the Persian Gulf countries. Defense spokesman for the German opposition party recently said that the worst human rights violations are apparently no longer a reason for refusing exporting arms. Lastly, earlier this year, a Stockholm International Peace Research Institute revealed that Germany is the world's third largest arms exporter behind the United States and Russia. Saudi Arabia was the biggest importer of German-made weapons. And the Pentagon wants to sell $2.7 billion in weapons to a country on the verge of collapse. The Pentagon is looking to bolster its military options for Syria's civil war by sending $2.7 billion in weapons to Iraq, despite the country being on the verge of a civil war. The weapons deal would include 681 Stinger missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, and 40 truck-mounted launchers, as well as 3 Hawk anti-aircraft batteries with 216 Hawk missiles, according to Agent France Press. They said it's viewed as a way to bolster a possible no-fly zone in Iraq, though it would also help to cut off Iranian supplies to Syria through Iraq airspace. I love this part right here. One of the main concerns for not arming Syrian militias in the first against Assad is that the same Stinger missiles could fall into the wrong hands. 57 killed, 161 wounded in spite of Iraq bombings. This is as Ramadan is winding down. Baghdad was again targeted in a series of coordinated evening bombings. 57 people killed and 161 were wounded there across Iraq. So says here, one of the fatalities, a suicide bomber, was discovered to be a Saudi national. U.S. intervention could fuel multiple conflicts in Yemen. So as the U.S. turns its focus on Yemen, the nation is presented as a hotbed for al-Qaeda. And it says, while the ACAP's home territory, talking about al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen is a nation of myriad instabilities and multiple incipient conflicts that the U.S. intervention could bring America directly into. The attempts to establish an independent Islamic emirate with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula ties in Abiyan province and the U.S. focus, but is small among Yemen's problems. So Yemen as a whole is really united, with a central government based in Sana'a mostly controlling the area between there and the coast. Everything else is tribal areas with heavily armed tribal militias have shown themselves capable of standing up to the Yemeni military when the situation requires. It was one of those conflicts that we saw the Yemeni military helicopter shot down, killing 8 earlier today. They say the tribal disputes with the government are almost entirely distinct from the al-Qaeda conflict. While the al-Qaeda and the Arabian Peninsula at time takes advantage of such clashes to establish a foothold in certain areas, the notoriously independent tribes aren't likely to happily greet a U.S. intervention. So this is what I've talked about too, secession in Yemen. They have here that 2 distinct secessionist movements are also ongoing on opposite sides of the country. In the north, the Shiites are hoping to carve out independence while being hotly contested by Saudi Arabia and the Yemeni military. Of course, the Yemeni government tries to blame the Iran government, says though the ambition for autonomy is a long-standing issue, kind of like in Mali, right? Meanwhile, the lack of stability in Saleh And now Hadi-ruled Yemen has people thinking South Yemen should reemerge as an independent entity. The Yemeni military is often cracking down on this entirely non-religious secessionist movement, and it says here it will be yet another one that the U.S. could rapidly get sucked into. And this could be just like Mali 2, where they use these tribes and stuff that want autonomy to fight Al-Qaeda and get them out of there. And then, of course, then comes the democratic elections. And then those people, those tribes, like the Tuareg rebels, don't get their autonomy. So they just get used. U.S. drone strikes kill 11. Yemen says plot has been foiled. So the Al-Qaeda in Yemen plan to conquer multiple eastern cities. Another U.S. drone strike hit Yemen's province today. The Shabwa province, killing at least 7 people, were described as suspects. It's the second strike in less than 24 hours, with a hit yesterday killing 4 others, and it was the 5th U.S. drone strike in less than 2 weeks. You know, it's kind of funny, too, because it's like anytime you have people that want to they want to have some kind of grievances or a secessionist movement against the government, all of a sudden these Al-Qaeda make their way into this area, and then all of a sudden now the Yemen is like, you have these centralized governments, these governments that are trying to use Al-Qaeda to come in here and create chaos, so then that they never have to actually deal with the the secessionists or the quote activists or the opposition, and then they actually get the opposition to work with them, and it fizzles out. Kind of interesting, because it's kind of from what it seems like what happened in Syria to a certain degree. Al-Qaeda embassy bombing plot foiled in Yemen. So an Al-Qaeda plot to attack several foreign embassies in Yemen, capital of Sana'a, was foiled on Wednesday, and American-backed government forces continue to hammer away at the group's stronghold in the south. They say the embassy plot comes just after, about a month ago, after American, British, Saudi intelligence foiled an Al-Qaeda attempt to blow up a commercial airline in the U.S. airspace. The would-be bomber, who actually was a double agent working with U.S. and Saudi intelligence, was a native of the Mideast country and a naturalized British citizen. And I saw this, yesterday come out, and it's just like, it gets more ridiculous and more ridiculous, like the underpants bomber. Al-Qaeda may have new ingenious liquid explosives. So a new undetectable generation of liquid explosives may have been developed by a bomb maker affiliated with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So I guess I could say a new undetectable generation of liquid explosives may have been developed by Lockheed Martin, an affiliation with Al-Qaeda. Okay, so it's the same person who created the underpants bomb, which the guy was actually, Muttalib was actually a CIA. He had a CIA handler bring him onto the plane. He was also an FBI informant. So, also he developed a Frankenbomb, which gets surgically implanted to the bomber's bodies. So go figure, right? All the stories that we hear coming out of the mainstream media create fear and legitimize the war on terror. So I know that's why they rolled out a lot of the body scanners right after the Christmas Day bomber and stuff. But back to Yemen, State Department orders U.S. citizens to leave Yemen. So they've been drone striking the hell out of citizens in Yemen. They call them Al-Qaeda suspects. What if they're just secessionists? What if they're just tribal groups? And they're getting pissed off at these drone strikes. And now all of a sudden, you hear about the shutting down, right? The shutting down of the embassy, the embassies and that. And then you see the alternative media, instead of saying, well, wait a minute, we've been drone bombing Yemen for a while. Maybe the people are getting pissed off. Maybe it's not Al-Qaeda suspects, anyone between the ages of 16 and 45 years old that are male. Maybe they're pissed off, but and then so, well, how do they do this? How do they combat that? They say, well, we have a threat. We have a threat now. But for some reason, the alternative media is saying that this is a distraction from the NSA uproar. New York Times admits Al-Qaeda terror threat used to divert attention from NSA uproar. Dude, they've been dragging out this NSA thing for so long. It's like I said before. You should pretty much know and not be naive of what the NSA is capable, what it's there for. It's for domestic surveillance. That's what it's for. So when Obama goes on Jay Leno and says, we do not spy on, we do not have domestic spying. It's just like all spying. The war on terror is for the citizens themselves. the army, the military. It's for quelling, civil unrest. And me personally, I think this whole NSA thing is actually a distraction from other things that are going on. So it's funny when I see that people say, well, this whole Al-Qaeda terror threat is a diversion from this NSA uproar, when I think the whole NSA thing was a distraction. So, State Department orders U.S. citizens to leave Yemen. The U.S. military evacuated non-essential U.S. government personnel from Yemen today due to the high threat of attack by al-Qaeda, which has triggered temporary shutdown of 19 American diplomatic posts across the Middle East and Africa. Britain summons all embassy staff from Yemen and shutters mission. So, temporarily withdrawing all staff from its embassy in Yemen, in addition to shutting the mission altogether due to what authorities claimed as increased security concerns. U.S. consulate in Milan evacuated after bomb threat. A building housing in the U.S. consulate in Milan and other offices temporarily evacuated Tuesday after the diplomatic mission received a letter containing a bomb threat. So, Italy's anti-terrorism squad said the letter carried a symbol frequently used in the past by Italian anarchists. That's even better. Tens of thousands rallied to oust Tunisian government. So, said here that tens of thousands flooded the streets in downtown Tunis on Tuesday to demand the transitional government's ouster in the largest opposition protest since the country's political crisis 2 weeks ago. So, it's also kind of suspicious too. The move says here the move comes weeks before the Transitional Assembly is due to complete a draft constitution and new election laws. So, like Syria, before they can actually have any reforms next year, 2014, they had to get Assad out of there. They had to get that regime to at least fall or have the area so destabilized so they couldn't actually hold any reforms. Broad U.S. terror alert mystifies experts. So, the U.S. officials insisted that the security measures for these diplomatic posts were to thwart an immediate specific threat. They say that these counterterrorism experts who note that the alert covers a set of nations from the Middle East to an island off the southern coast of Africa. Says, but how does it make sense for the State Department to close embassies as far as Madagascar, where there's been no visible jihadist activity, and why the countries that weathered numerous terrorist attacks, such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, for example, were excluded or allowed to reopen quickly? Alright, so I'm going to leave off here and go into part 3. We're going to cover Asian news and some war on terror, liberty, sovereignty, kind of get into some martial law type stuff. This is GGN. I'm Darko. Thank you.